Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the show. This is Hunter McWaters. Today I got a really cool guest, Ryan Mickler from Order of Man. You probably heard of Ryan before. He's got a podcast and a social media presence, all about manhood and masculinity, and he's also a hunter. And so we talk about a lot of cool stuff related to masculinity and manhood and what it means to be a man and why hunting is important. Also, weave in the spiritual element there and talk about what it means to be a man of God. And it's a really, really interesting conversation. Also, I know I have, been looking at my downloads and stuff. I feel like I got a lot of new people coming to the podcast lately, kind of maybe with some of my stuff with Brian Call and Gritty. And so if you're new to the podcast, thank you for joining. I appreciate you. And also, people that have been listening since the beginning, I really appreciate y'all's support as well. So, but if you are new, please just take a minute. It would help me out big time if you like the podcast, if you like the video content and stuff like that. Just go to Apple and just leave me a rating or review. Leave me a written review if you can, or a 5-star rating. Both of them are very helpful. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can follow me on Instagram. YouTube, you just search my name, Hunter McWaters, or you can find me on Instagram at The Hunter's Quest. And as you guys probably have noticed, doing some more stuff with Gritty. So I'm actually helping Brian to edit some of his films moving forward. I'm also going to be doing several hunts with them this year. I'm going to be able to get to hunt, but also film. So we're looking forward to that. It's exciting stuff. Going to be helping Brian and Brad to grow Gritty, and hopefully I'm going to continue building the Hunter's Quest as well. The podcasts are going to keep coming. The video content, some of it's going to go on Gritty, some will be on my channel. So I hope you guys will stick around for that. And if you have not yet, definitely go over to the Gritty YouTube channel and watch the Kodiak film. It's my first hunt film. It's gotten really good response so far. And my buddy Ned kills the 11th biggest Kodiak blacktail ever killed on record. So, and I got it all on camera, the dramatic finish there at the end. So if you have not yet, go to Brian Call's Gritty YouTube channel, watch the film. And again, I want to say thank you to all the new listeners out there, but also especially thank you to guys that have been, here from the beginning. And so looking forward to continuing to build this brand and interact with you guys and just pump out some really good content this year. Got a lot of really cool hunts and stuff lined up. So anyway, thanks again. Enjoy this podcast with Ryan Mickler. So I'm here with my guest, Ryan Mickler. How you doing, Ryan?
Good, brother. How you doing?
Good. So you are in Vermont, is that right?
Close, Maine.
Maine. Okay, cool. Another
Yeah.
East Coaster. I don't rarely talk to other East Coasters.
Where are you?
Virginia.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, we moved here. My family and I moved here about almost 3 years ago now. So we've
Okay.
loved it. We've really enjoyed it.
Where are you from originally?
Southern Utah. Big
Okay.
change.
Nice. Yeah, I was just out in
Yeah.
Utah. Beautiful out there.
Oh, we love it. It's amazing. We were just ready for a bit of an adventure and something different. And so, we moved out here across the country, and my family and I have really enjoyed it. So it's all good.
Yeah, that's really cool. So did you, let's see, is that how you met up with Brian being out from Utah, or did you know him somewhere else, from somewhere else?
Brian, who?
Call.
Brian, who?
Brian Call.
Oh, Brian Call. Yeah, no, I knew him from Utah. Yeah, we were doing some business and things like that together. I was really close with Mountain Ops at the time, so
Okay.
that's how we connected. And yeah, so Brian's an amazing guy, man. You can't help but love that guy. I was supposed to go on a hunt with him last year. Sorry, man, my focus on my camera is all jacked up.
That's okay.
I was supposed to go on a hunt with him last year, and we were gonna go. We were a couple of weeks out, but my son ended up having his first powerlifting meet, so we couldn't go because I'm not going to
Yeah.
miss that to go on a
Sure.
hunt. So
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I was
man.
just out. I was just staying in this house for a week because I'm gonna be doing some work with Gritty, and And so y'all are doing a trip this year, aren't you?
Yeah, we're planning on it. Like I said, our last year's got postponed and messed up, so we're hoping to make it work this year instead.
Sweet, sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I saw you at the expo too, and like I kept running into you like over and over. I was like, dude, I promise you, I'm not following you.
I love the Western Expo.
It
It's
was
man,
fun.
we've gone for, I think that was our fourth time, maybe third or fourth time. Obviously, we didn't go last year, where they canceled it.
Right.
But I always bring my boys up there or out there, and man, we have a great time. So it's good to see you. It's good to see everybody else. It's always
Yeah.
fun to connect that way.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Do you? I just did the CrossFit Open workout. Are you into CrossFit at all?
I was before I moved out here. I was
Okay.
big into CrossFit. I did it for about 4 or 5 years. And now I'm so heavily focused on, when it comes to my fitness stuff, so heavily focused on jujitsu. I
Gotcha.
mean, I train jujitsu 5 days a week, so I don't do
Nice.
CrossFit in addition to it.
Yeah. Although I heard Chris Weaver once said that I think he said like if you do CrossFit and jujitsu, it's like cheating.
I don't doubt it. I mean, I bet that's 100% right. It's just, where do you find the time, on
Exactly.
top of
Yeah.
everything else you want to accomplish and
Right.
everything else you want to do. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
you get the
that's probably
same.
100% right.
Do you feel like you get the same amount of like fitness from? Because I've been toying around with trying to do some jujitsu too, but like you said, it's the same thing. Like I do CrossFit 5 days a week, and I just don't have anywhere to squeeze it in. But
Yeah.
you get the same amount of fitness kind of level from the jujitsu, or
I don't think so. Um, it's just different.
yeah,
CrossFit is pretty complimentary. I will say that, but even still, it's different.
yeah,
To uh, train jujitsu, use your like, you're just working different muscles, things you didn't know you had. You're working on flexibility. Yeah, you're working on that to a degree in CrossFit. And I'm not saying jujitsu is better than CrossFit. It's just different. It would be
totally.
like going from, maybe not to the degree, but strength training versus training for a marathon.
Gotcha.
So I feel like I'm healthier and fitter in a lot of ways. I'm definitely more capable, because
Yeah,
when shit hits the fan, like, your ability to do a 500-pound deadlift is really only goes so far,
yeah,
but your ability to choke somebody out could actually save your life,
for
right?
sure.
There's a lot of diminishing return, I think, in the, like, specifically in the powerlifting space. These guys that lift, 700-800 pounds, 1,000 pounds. I'm not knocking them like that. They're strong, and there's a skill set required and a level of discipline and commitment, but it's not totally translatable
Mm-hmm.
to your everyday ordinary life. I mean, there's a minimum degree of strength we should all strive for, and then anything above and beyond that is not necessarily going to translate to life.
Yeah,
So you got to, for me, where I have 4 kids, I've got a couple of different businesses. I have my own hobbies and activities. I really have to choose the one that I think is going to serve me most effectively, as broadly as possible.
for
And that's
sure.
why I'm so active with the jujitsu stuff.
Yeah, I feel like just the like confidence you would have of just knowing like you can probably take most average guys on the street if you had to. You know what I mean?
I mean, maybe, but it's interesting because I've had guys come into CrossFit, or excuse me, jujitsu, where, men just naturally, we size people up. So you look at
Hmm.
somebody else and you're like, oh yeah, I could crush this guy. And then they run circles around you. So it's really hard to tell
Yeah.
who can actually hurt you and kill you and who can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Not
live.
not to mention that everybody gets, people get lucky from time to time, and or they catch you off guard. And so I think jujitsu is, yes, made me more capable from that standpoint, but also made me more aware of, like, I'm not interested in getting in fights with people.
No,
I'm
not
not
at all.
interested in getting into a potential life or death situation. If I
Right.
have to, it's good to know that I have some degree of capability in a physical altercation, but I really don't want to find myself in that position.
Yeah. Yeah. So I grew up in Virginia Beach, which is where there's tons of Navy SEALs stationed and stuff. And I don't go out to
Or
bars anymore, but like I remember my dad when I was younger and used to go out and stuff. And my dad would always be like, do not get in a bar fight. You do not know around here who you're picking, getting in a fight with. You could get it, you
exactly.
know what I mean? So,
There's tells, you can look at somebody,
yeah.
my friend and jiu-jitsu instructor Pete Roberts, he's also the founder of Origin, told me the other day, he's like, I can just look at somebody and know if they train jiu-jitsu. I'm like, how do you know? He's like, I don't know, I've just been around long enough, I can tell.
Yeah.
And I believe that. But then there's also, if you, the old adage, if you see somebody with cauliflower ear,
Oh yeah.
like probably best just to leave them alone.
Yeah.
But then there's also an X factor that comes with having a level of confidence and proficiency where you can feel it and see it in another man, and you can distinguish between somebody who's trying to bullshit and has ego versus somebody who's genuinely competent and confident in themselves
Yeah.
to administer righteous violence if necessary.
For sure, man. So yeah, I know you're a hunter. Did you have did you have a good hunting season this year? Did you get any adventures?
Yeah, I had a great season, actually. Like I say actually because it doesn't always go like that. So I went to Hawaii
Ooh,
with
nice.
some buddies. Yeah, it was cool. We went to the island of Molokai, and I was able to harvest an axis deer out there with my bow,
That's cool.
which was like the hardest hunt I've ever done.
Really?
Yeah, dude, they're so turned on and they're twitchy and they're fast and they don't stop and they're crazy animals, but they're delicious.
I've
So
heard.
yeah, that was cool. And then after I was done with my hunt on Molokai, I went over to the Big Island with my family,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my buddies lives out on the island, and he said, "Hey, man, if you want to come hunt, come hunt." So I took me and my son and his friend who came to Hawaii with us, and I we all there was four of us. I took two of my sons and his friend, and we went and hunted goat on the Big Island, on the lava
Mm-hmm.
rocks, the Big Island. That was rad. So I was able to shoot a goat out there.
Nice.
My son shot a goat. We thought it killed it. Like he shot him I shot mine with my bow, and he shot one with the rifle, and the thing dropped and it just went legs up, like stiff, and just died. And I'm like, sweet. So he sets the rifle down, and I get up, I'm all stoked, and I'm yelling. I'm like, good job, buddy. Like you crushed him. And we went down there. We started to walk down, and he like popped up and ran 4 miles, and we watched
No
him run
way.
off. Yeah, it was crazy. And we couldn't go where this goat ran. So we
Wow.
weren't able to harvest him. But my buddy's like, don't worry, he's gonna live. Like, I think he just kind of hit him in the below the spine, above the vitals. So he hit him in
Yeah.
that no man's land and
Yep.
just stunned the crap out of him. And then I actually went after that. I had a fall hunt in Minnesota,
Mm.
and I shot a whitetail of my dreams.
Nice.
And like, not a huge rack, but the thing weighed, like, I'm not exaggerating, 293 pounds on the
Wow.
hoof.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
this
It's a
was
tank.
a behemoth of a Minnesota whitetail.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this particular hunt with some friends, about 6 or 7 of us, for I think that was my 4th year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can slay does all day long. I've shot like 12 does to every one buck that I've shot,
Yeah.
And I did shoot a doe out there the first day, or no, the second day I was out there. And then, day 3 or 4, I ended up putting one down on a nice, like a really nice buck. So
That's awesome.
that's a whole other story in and of itself. But yeah, I had a pretty good hunt season, man. Felt good about it.
Is there any good hunting around you in Maine?
Yeah, I mean, where I am, we're about an hour and a half north of Portland, so we're in the foothills of the mountain ranges here in Maine, which aren't really mountains. That's what they call them here. They're more like hills.
Yeah.
If you think about the rock compared to the Rocky Mountains, for example.
Sure.
So yeah, like where we are, it's pretty scarce. My son and I go out every year. My wife and I go out, and we'll see deer. We've got our cameras out, and we've got a food plot that we're working on. So we've definitely
Nice.
seen more deer over the past 2.5 years of being out here than we have in the past, because we're trying to make that happen.
Sure.
But even still, it's a little scarce. Lots of turkey. My son shot his very first turkey last year, which was cool.
Nice.
On our property, which makes it even better.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as hunting goes, like where I am anyways, it seems pretty scarce. I think if you get about an hour and a half to 2 hours north, you start getting into quite a bit of deer, and you get into a lot of moose up there as well. So our moose
Nice.
lottery registration is open right now. So
Mm.
my sons and I and my wife, we're all putting in for that. So this is our 3rd year putting in for it. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on the moose.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
cool, man.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I want to hear just a little bit. I think probably a lot of my listeners have heard of Order of Man and heard of you, but Just for guys who might be less familiar, like I just love to hear a little bit about your personal story, kind of like your background and like what led you to start Order of Man and like what is Order of Man.
Yeah, I wish I had a cool story about it. I really don't. Like my story is probably very similar to other people that have started podcasts where like, hey, this is a cool subject. This is something I'm interested in talking about. And then they just launch a podcast. And look, I'm not gonna downplay the fact that we've done some things right. We certainly have. But also our timing was pretty good. And,
Mm-hmm.
and not that I deliberately timed it that way. It's just that we got into it 7 years ago. you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
so the fact
Right
that
on the
we're still
cusp.
doing it yeah, exactly. I
And
mean, it
that's
was
really old
around.
for a podcast.
It is. It's been, and that's why we have success. Like it
Mm-hmm.
has less to do with how great and wonderful I can interview people and more to do with the fact that we've just been around long enough where we captured a lot of the attention.
Yeah.
And also people that have left podcasting, like all of their audiences trying to find somebody else. And so here we are 7 years later with our flag planted in the ground, and they're like, oh, okay, well, this, I guess, so maybe some of it's good, and maybe it's like, oh, just default, I guess this guy will work. But it's been good, man. So I started it. I was doing another podcast with my financial planning practice at the time. This was 7 years ago. And I realized very quickly I love the medium of podcasting, having conversations like this with you and other
Yeah.
people. And I just didn't want to have the same conversation I was having with regards to the financial planning stuff. So
Right.
I need some help in my life. I was, the business was doing fairly well. My relationship was okay. Like things were good. They were mediocre. They were fine. And I thought, man, I really want to have some coaching, some one-on-one coaching with people that I'm inspired by. And
Mm-hmm.
these are men, that are doing things that I want to be doing. So I thought, well, why don't I just pivot the podcast? I'll talk with these guys and I'll invite them onto my podcast. And in return, I'll share it with my audience, which was literally like 5 people at the time. So if they would have known that, they probably wouldn't have come on the podcast, but I may or may not have disclosed that to them. And I started in March of 2015, and it's been a meteoric rise since.
Yeah.
We've interviewed, I think, 370-ish
Wow.
incredible men. We have 2 other episodes that we do each and every week.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've done 850-ish episodes.
Wow.
Of the podcast.
That's
and
a
then
lot.
we started to bring in things that guys were interested in. They were interested in getting together face to face. And now we have events. They were interested in a brotherhood. So we have what's called our Iron Council, which is our digital brotherhood. They wanted a hat, they wanted a shirt. So as we see trends and solutions that people are looking for, we stand in that gap and we provide the solutions. And we've had a pretty tremendous rise because again, a lot of things we've done right. And a lot of things we just happen to time it pretty well by
You just did
fortuitous events.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of it too. How many people have said, well, I'd like to start a podcast. Well, why don't you? Well, I have a family and I have a life and I have a business and I have this and yes, great. So do you. So do I.
Yep.
So what you're saying is that we don't have those things,
Right.
and that you can only start a podcast if you have free time and you're independently wealthy. Well, that's not me. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But you just do it, you make it work and you make it happen. And if it's something worth pursuing, then you figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah. I started this thing about a year ago or a little over a year ago and, had a full-time job. I got 2 kids and, but like you said,
Right.
You're creating content at the same time. You're literally just networking and having an hour-long conversation with like really cool people and learning. And it's amazing the stuff that I've learned and the doors that have opened just from having these conversations,
Well, so you're still working another job, it sounds like, full time?
So I actually just recently have left my job and I'm going full time into this and also video production, working with some with Gritty and doing some of my own stuff as well. Just released my first film. I don't know if you got a chance to check it out, but Brian released it on his channel. So if you get a minute, maybe check it out. Yeah.
I will. Yeah. Congrats, man. That's a very cool transition.
Yeah.
And then to be able to make that happen, like not a lot of people can. So props to you, dude. That's awesome. It's a pretty cool thing. I was saying this on social media the other day is like, my job is to talk with extraordinary people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that? Like, that is an incredible I'm so fortunate. I'm so blessed because I literally talk to awesome people all day.
Yeah,
I can't think of a better thing to do.
it's pretty cool, man. So yeah, moving on a little bit, and this is kind of a broad question, but like, you know, especially these days, like gender issues and all this stuff is so politicized, and there's so much going on with it. Which is why I think it's so important that we have voices like yours. But I think I saw something recently. I think you put it on your social media. It was something along the lines of like, males are born, but like men are made, kind of thing. So, I mean, what do you think goes into making a man? And that can be in respect to, things that we can do ourselves to develop as men, or even, guys that might have sons. Like I know your son is. I know you launched a podcast recently about that. So, what goes into making a man, you think?
So I pulled this up on Instagram about what you were referencing. I said all men are male, but not all males are men.
Yeah.
That's what I said. And people lost their minds. It's hilarious because that shouldn't be controversial. In fact, it's not
No.
controversial. The only reason that's controversial, we were talking about transgenderism a minute ago, is because we don't have enough real shit to worry about.
Yep. That's
Like,
true.
do you think the people in Ukraine that are being attacked by Russia right now are worried about transgenderism?
Yeah. No.
You think they're worried about defunding the police? You think they're worried about preserving conservative values or trying to progress past those values? Like, they're not worried about that. They're worried
Right.
about something that's real, like a real life and death situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're worried about dumb shit. Like you go into Starbucks and the 16-year-old kid puts the wrong flavor in your mocha frappuccino and you lose your freaking mind over it. It's like, that's your issue today.
Yeah.
Like that's congratulations. That's your biggest problem.
Yeah.
What a cool life that you have. So we get wrapped up into a lot of bullcrap that just frankly doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But that said, when you ask me, what does it mean to be a man? I mean, it's on my hat: protect, provide, preside. Our job as men is to be protectors, providers, and presiders, which is synonymous with leadership. Presiders over and for people, for ourselves, for our loved ones, and also for people who can't do it themselves. So if a man is working on becoming more proficient towards those avenues, then that's what we would call manly behavior. And one of the posts, or one of the comments that I got quite often on that post that I made about not all males are men, is people said, well, who gets to make you to decide? Like, who are you to decide what makes a man? It's not me. It's thousands and thousands of years of human history.
Yeah.
There's a great book called Manhood in the Making. I think it might be that one right there. Manhood in the Making by David Gilmour. And what he did is he went through and he studied and researched cultures throughout time and history. Many of these cultures had not even been introduced to each other. So there was no level of influence or introduction to these tribes and these cultures. And he found striking similarities between the way that the overwhelming, the vast, if not all majority of tribes and cultures looked at masculinity. And surprise, surprise, it's about being a protector. It's about providing for your family. It's about leadership. So this isn't like a clever mantra based on alliteration, although it sounds good. It's reality.
Yeah.
So do I get to decide? No. Thousands of years of human history. And some people will say, well, we've evolved past that. Yeah, we've evolved past that when things are perfect and you're worrying about your mocha frappuccino.
Yeah.
But when shit hits the fan, does society in general turn to the woman to fight their battles? No.
Right.
They're turning
And who
to
are
men.
you to say we've evolved past that? Maybe we've devolved past that.
Well, in a lot of ways, our culture is a completely degenerate culture, devoid of any meaning and purpose and value and honor. So that's a really good point. Who are you to say we've evolved? I think in many ways we have. I mean, if you look at our susceptibility to illness, if you look at the level of wealth and abundance and the access to prosperity and the access to clean drinking water and technology and information and wealth, yes, we've evolved in a lot of ways. And then if you look at the filth and the degeneracy and the nonsense and
Hmm.
the suicide rates and the violence and the vitriol and hostility towards each other, then in many ways we've devolved.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. So, I mean, why do you think there's been such an attack on manhood and masculinity in the last, I don't know, it's really become evident in the last, 5, 10 years, but even before that, I mean, like my dad, I was just to be like, oh, dad, whatever. But like, I remember when he's a little kid talking about how like on every sitcom you see, like the dad is like this buffoon, this like idiot kind of guy. It's kind of like something it's kind of been infiltrating for a while, and now it's kind of rearing its ugly head. I feel like where do you think this attack on masculinity and manhood is coming from?
I've thought a lot about the entertainment industry with every dad and man portrayed as a buffoon. And I'm like, well, see, they're doing it on purpose. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, is it really that coordinated, or is it just it's funny and they can make a few bucks? And I think
Yeah.
it tends to be more that, because we all laugh at Homer Simpson, right? It's funny,
Yeah.
So is that a deliberate attack on masculinity? I don't think so. Now, that said, I think there is some bigger players at work here. And truthfully and honestly speaking, men represent a threat to those who want to exert their dominance and power over society at whole. So if you look at the government, the government isn't interested in having individuals. It isn't interested in teaching self-reliance. The government is interested in you being its subjects.
Hmm.
And if you're a strong, capable, independent man who's attempting to pass those values on to your children, then you're a threat directly to the government. So the government has a very vested interest from their own desires to squash any sign of independent, capable masculinity. It's the same thing with academia. Academia is filled with a bunch of horrible, horrible people who want nothing more than to brainwash our children and make them believe some of these concepts that have just proven time and time again, like communism, for example, to be responsible for the slaughtering, quite literally, of millions and millions of people.
Mm.
And who is it that you think about the greatest generation, who stands up against these atrocities? Strong, independent, capable men.
Mm.
So if you don't want to be threatened, what do? You got to get after the men.
Hmm. Yeah.
You got to go after the men, because the less strong, the less capable, the less assertive, the less intelligent, the less bold they are, the less emboldened, the more sovereign they are, the less likely is that you as a government or an actor of the government or academia are going to be able to fend off, and those attacks against your own desires. But we even see it in the medical community. The American Psychological Association has quite literally, you guys can go look at the study yourself, don't take my word for it, but has quite literally deemed the virtues that we would inherently attribute to masculinity, like stoicism, aggression, violence, dominance, to being inherently toxic and destructive to our young men.
Hmm.
I heard a podcast this morning where I don't know if it was a woman or a man. They seem to be interchangeable these days, but they're really not, because words mean something. So I believe it was a man who thought he was a woman, say that it's destructive, it's harmful to ascribe to these traditional gender roles. Really show me that. Like, show me, like, that's a clever little tagline. You're going to get a bunch of people riled up about it. Some in agreement, some in disagreement. Prove to me, like, show me why that's the case.
Yeah.
Because I'd be willing to bet that if we looked at the suicide rates between those who are confused about what gender they are and those who aren't, suicide rates, depression, anxiety, mental illness is significantly higher in those who don't understand what gender they are. So you show me, and I'm not interested in your little buzzwords. I'm not interested in what you think. Like, you show me why those who ascribe to what you call traditional gender roles are harmed because of that. And I'll show you 5 to 10 to 20 who don't ascribe to traditional gender roles, who are significantly more mentally ill than those who do.
Yeah.
So,
and not to
that's the
mention
problem
the
with social
thousands
media
of years of human history where people ascribed to traditional gender roles and did just fine.
Yeah, but that's because the tyrannical patriarchy that kept everybody down and didn't allow anybody to express themselves as who they truly were. I see these transgender people and are like, well, this is who I am. No, it's actually exactly opposite of who you are.
Yeah.
Like, you're not being who you truly are. You're trying to make yourself into something you're not.
Right.
So of course there's a lot of confusion. Of course there's a lot of frustration. If we could teach our youth in particular how to embrace who they are as men and women, and that's not to say that you're not going to have feminine men or masculine women. I know both in my life. I know some very feminine men. I don't think less of them. They're just more feminine in nature. And I know some masculine women. I don't think less of them as women. I just know they're going to be generally more masculine than the rest of their female counterparts. But that doesn't make them women or men. They are what they are. They just happen to be more masculine or more feminine. But there's not this like third tier, this third class or the 17th class of gender. It just means you're a man or a woman, barring intersex people, which I know is a thing. That's a legitimate medical thing.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you're a man or a woman, and that's who you really are, not something you feel like you want to be.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to what you were saying earlier about how they've classified, these masculine traits as inherently damaging to our young people. Like it just brought to mind, like the other day, my sister texted me and she was like legitimately worried. She's like, I need your advice on her son, my nephew. He's like, he's really into war and, army stuff and tech. And she's like, I'm worried. Like, and I was like, Megan, I was like, I don't know if you remember, but like when I was his age, I was obsessed with army stuff, and I'd spend all my allowance at the surplus store, and like, you might, obviously there's a balance there if they're like, going off the deep end, but like channel it into, sports, martial arts, hunting, but that's normal. Like that's a little boy, and
how old is he?
12.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I was literally running around my neighborhood in army fatigues and grease paint at his age. Like, literally, that's what we did for fun.
Well, he's just getting into the stage now where, his hormones are going to start changing. He's going to start hitting puberty. Testosterone production is going to ramp up in his little body. He's going to start putting on muscle. He's going to hit growth spurts. He's going to become more aggressive. He's going to become more confrontational. Not only is this factually true, but I can see it anecdotally in my own son, who turns 14 later this month. This is the reality of it. And so you can try to subdue it, and you can try to squash it, and you can try to tell him that he's evolved past this, or, we don't need this in society, or even worse, you can tell him he's toxic because he's exhibiting those traits. Or you could say, hey, he wants to be physical. He wants to protect. He wants to provide for people. He wants to be capable. Yeah. And so how can, to your point you just made a minute ago, can we harness this in productive ways? Martial arts, jujitsu, hunting, exercise, sports. Those are the positive outlets that young men and men, full-grown men, need to be able to harness these masculine traits for productive outcomes. So many people say masculinity is inherently toxic. And then you have another side of the camp that says masculinity is inherently positive. Actually, no, it's neither. It's not inherently toxic or productive. It just is. It's like saying the wood behind you on your wall is positive. Is it? I don't know. Like, or is it negative? No, it just depends on how you use it. Right. And so if you're using it to produce for yourself and other people, then yeah, it's a positive thing. Right. Like you could even take hunting. If you're out there slaughtering a bunch of animals just for the sake of killing animals, then yeah, that's destructive. That's harmful. You're not being a great steward over your resources. But if you're doing it ethically and you're harvesting what you're going to eat or what somebody else is going to eat, and you're utilizing the animal and you're respecting the animal and you're trying to make a minimal footprint on the environment as you go in and harvest an animal and drag that animal out of the woods to consume, then that's a very positive thing. And masculinity is the same way. If you're using it to hurt people, like if you're being violent and you're trying to hurt people, then yes, that's not productive, obviously. But if you're using violence or aggression to go after what you want in righteousness or to protect somebody who's being victimized, then I think we could all agree that's a very positive use of masculinity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing too. I said to her was like, direct him to I said, first of all, we actually the warrior, archetype or the warrior ethos is something that we need in society. Have him look at positive warriors like David or Gideon from the Bible. Um,
Yeah.
and go that route. And because if you try to suppress it, like you said, and tell him it's toxic, it just could come out some other way in a really toxic way, if he's trying to suppress that or whatnot.
But even David, we all think of David and Goliath, and we think about how heroic and courageous he was, but he went bad, so
Yeah, he made
he,
mistakes.
he exactly. So it's not really what you are, it's how you utilize what you have, and whether you're trying to be productive for you and your people, or you're trying to be harmful and destructive for those individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, and along that note too, I mean, one of the kind of themes of the podcast is spirituality, and something I've seen over time that's kind of sad to me, and I even kind of bought into the lie a little bit at one point in my life was, um, I don't, I get, I would say maybe it's the enemy, and I mean like the spiritual enemy, like the devil, but there's kind of this like lie that I feel like has infiltrated that spirituality or like being religious is feminine, and like there's kind of like the macho thing of like, church is for women or whatever. Like,
I'm
have
gonna
you
go out
seen
in the
that?
woods. That's where my God is.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Have you seen that?
yeah, and they're not wrong actually. I don't think spirituality is feminine, but very quite a bit of religion is. Like
Mm,
I don't think that's wrong. I think there's a lot of validity to what people say when they feel feminine at church. Because think about what church is. You go in there and somebody lectures and preaches at you and tells you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And by the way, I'm religious. I'm both spiritual and religious. There's a difference. I'm
yeah,
both,
for sure.
but I see it from the perspective that yeah, there's some validity to that, and it's been overly feminized. Women are even becoming leaders in many of these Christian church congregations, trying to tell men how they should perform and how they should behave. Like, show me where that's a biblical principle.
Well, it
That's
says
not a biblical
Paul says
principle.
the direct opposite. Do not let a woman usurp authority over a man.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and
I
you
guess
have,
that's where I draw the line is, like you said earlier, there's a difference between spirituality and religiousness. And so when I say that, I'm kind of inherently coming to discussion with, from a spiritual perspective um, in terms of like being a triune man, being, paying attention to your physical fitness, your spiritual and your mental. So I would agree with you that there is a lot of feminism has infiltrated the church, but I almost don't even, I'm not even really talking about that when I mention spirituality. I'm more talking about men developing the relationship with God in a, in your secret time, in your secret place, and that kind of thing.
yeah, but
And
I
being a
think part of
spiritual
the
leader of
reason,
your household.
sure. I think part of the reason a lot of men believe that is they believe they're subjecting themselves to something else. And
Mm,
by definition, you are. I'm
true.
subjecting myself to God's will and his authority and dominion over me. And that might on the surface uh seem counterintuitive with regards to masculinity, but it really isn't. So let's use a concept that I think all men can appreciate as masculine, or at least they resonate with. Discipline equals freedom. Let's
Mm,
just take that for a second. Like, every man listening to this knows of Jocko, and they've heard his podcast, and they've heard and Aristotle said through discipline comes freedom 2000 years ago. So these aren't new
mm,
concepts. So if somebody says, well, I feel less masculine because I'm subjecting myself to God's authority, do you feel the same about waking up when your alarm goes off at 6 o'clock every morning? No. Right. Do you feel like you're subjecting yourself to somebody else's authority when you get up and you go into your job? Like, you wake up, you go work for an organization or a company. Do you feel like you're less manly because you go work for this organization? No, not necessarily.
yeah.
Right. And then you come home and your wife asks you if you can help out around the house with a few things before dinner. Do you feel less masculine or manly because you're helping her take care of your house together?
Yeah.
No. Okay, well, why are you like, nobody's forcing you to follow God.
Right.
God explicitly said that you have agency over your life. Like
Hmm.
it's one of the greatest benefits and blessings that we have is that you get to choose. So are you subjecting yourself to God's authority? Yes, voluntarily.
Hmm.
Nobody's exerting their dominance over you.
Right.
Now, if they were and you weren't willing to stand for that, that might be something else. But
Right.
when you voluntarily decide to follow a path or a pattern that you think is going to be best, here's another example. Let's say you're really into David Goggins or Andy
Hmm.
Frisella with 75 Hard, or Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. These are all guys that men follow quite religiously, if you will. Do you think that you're being less manly because you're following Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, or that you're being less manly as you exercise 75 hard, or being
Right.
less manly because you try to embrace what David Goggins teaches in what he shares in his message?
Right.
No. Okay, that's the same thing. You're voluntarily following those precepts because you think they're going to serve you in a better way.
Yeah.
That's not unmanly.
Yeah. And if you're
It's
going to
just
follow anybody, it might as well be the one who created the universe, right? Not like some other guy.
I would think. I mean, let's also there's things to be learned from man. Let's not,
Sure.
we
Sure.
don't want to take it there because I've heard some religious zealots are like, well, I shouldn't be learning from you. I should only be learning from God. It's like, well, also truth is everywhere,
Hmm.
and you don't have to worship me in order to implement something that maybe I taught you or was valuable in your life. I'm not asking you to hold me up on some divine pedestal, but
Hmm.
maybe there is something that can be learned. So we got to
Absolutely.
hold people in the right place.
Yeah. And, another thing too that I think is lost a lot today, because like you're saying, people immediately go to, well, I have to surrender to God. I have to bow the knee to Jesus or whatever. At the same time, something that's lost, I feel like a lot, is Jesus says, I've given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the powers of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means harm you. So like, yes, in a way you are surrendering to Jesus, but then he gives us dominion. And it talks a lot in the Bible about how we have dominion through Christ over all the powers of the enemy, even over nature and stuff like that as well.
Well, I think there's a misconception among many Christians that if they need something or want something, they have to put it on the shoulders and feet of God.
Right.
And I don't agree with that.
Many times
It's
we're told to do the thing ourselves. Like we don't talk to God about the mountain. We tell the mountain to move.
in his behalf, in his
Right.
name.
Yeah.
So he's already given you everything that you need to thrive and win. And so you're like, so I hear people say things like, well, if it's God's will, well, I can tell you right now, God's will is for you to be fulfilled in life. Like that's
Yes.
not even a question.
Right.
Like
Jesus
we
always
already know
healed.
that, right? We already know it's God's will for you to be fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
So what I feel like a lot of people are doing when they say things like that, oh, if it's meant to be, if it's God's will, is they're putting the responsibility on
Right.
God's shoulders, and it doesn't belong on his shoulders.
Yep.
It belongs on yours. I think about that with my own kids. And I'm not comparing my relationship with my kids to God's with mine, but it will help us is
Sure.
I can't solve all of my children's problems, especially as they get older.
Yeah.
Like they have control and authority over their own lives. I want the best for them. I can guide and direct and mentor and coach and give resources. But at the end of the day, they have to make their own decisions. And I
Mhm.
have to honor their ability to do so. Because if I force them to make a good decision, it wasn't really a decision.
Yeah. Exactly.
And there's no virtue in being forced to do something that's good. Like
Right.
if let's say, like, we can all agree that working out and exercising is good for us. And let's say that somebody had some sort of control over me and said, you will work out. I'm going to put a gun to your head if you don't work out every single day for an hour. Okay, you're going to reap the benefits of working out, sure. But does that make you a disciplined person, a virtuous person? No, you only did it because somebody had a gun to your head.
Right.
What makes you virtuous is getting up and sacrificing it and doing it, knowing that you don't have to,
Yeah.
that you could be spending your time doing something else and yet still making the decision that's going to serve you and yours best.
Yep. Yeah, like you just said with your kid. I mean, like your son, mature sons do what they're supposed to do. Like they operate off of commander's intent. Like I know what God would want me to do in this situation. I don't need to ask for a leading or a special word or guidance. I know God wants this. This is wrong. This needs to be right. So I'm a mature son. I'm going to make it right. I don't need to ask permission first.
Right. Right.
So anyway, that's good stuff, man. Along that same note, another one of the themes of the podcast is hunting, and I feel like a lot of these attacks on spirituality, and other things. There's rarely a full frontal assault. It's kind of usually kind of infiltrates its way in and stuff like that. And so I've seen a little bit of like subtle infiltration into even like the hunting and the outdoor world, like erosion, in terms of stuff like that. Have you seen any of that in your work?
Um, I don't think so. I think if anything, I've noticed a resurgence in hunting. I've only been hunting for about 5 years, so I may not have known what it was like 20 years ago outside of the relationships I have with my friends and people that I interact with who are hunters.
Yeah.
But I've never really, I experience people if I post something about hunting, or say something, there's always the idiots who come in and say, well, hunting's bad and we've evolved past that and you're evil and you should die. There's always that. But I don't know that's any more prevalent than it's ever been,
Right.
and
I guess
that's
there's
something
like,
we're always going to have to deal with.
I've seen a little bit of this kind of move to just for little subtle things. Like you can't say, oh, I killed this animal. It's like I harvested it, and like all this kind of
Yeah, for sure. There's
stuff.
PC sides of it, right?
Yeah.
And like it's not totally bad. The first hunt I ever went on was with a friend of mine, and I shot a deer. In fact, it's you can't really see, but I'd have to move my camera, but it's up here. I shot a deer, and I was gonna take a picture, and he's like, "Hey, just so you know, if we ever take a picture, like the deer's tongue was hanging out." I was like, "Put the
Yeah.
tongue back in the deer's mouth," like because you want to be respectful.
Sure.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with paying homage or respect to an animal. And then there's also
Mm-hmm.
the optics of it. I don't want to be posting a bunch of gruesome pictures. I can, and I don't think it's totally gross. I think it's actually kind of beautiful when you harvest an animal
Mm-hmm.
or kill an animal, if you want to use that verbiage, and you take the heart out and you grill it and you eat the animal's heart. Like that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But if that bothers other people, then I'm going to fight on that front too, because it is a fight. If we don't fight for our rights as hunters, those rights are going to be eroded away by people who are willing to be nasty and vitriol and more vocal than we are. So we just have to
Yeah.
be just as vocal. Yeah, but like let's not pretend it's something different than it is. When I go out into the woods, whether I get a moose tag this year and I go out, like I am trying to kill a moose and
Yeah.
consume its flesh.
Yeah.
That
I,
doesn't bother me. It probably
yeah.
bothers other people. And so I am aware of it, but
Yeah. I guess I've just
yeah.
seen some people get like too much like, oh, it's not about, harvesting animal. It's really about the experience. And yeah, I get that totally. But at the end of the day, like when you're hunting, you're going out with a weapon in your hand. Yes, the killing is a big part of it. Like we shouldn't be ashamed of that is all I'm trying to say.
Well, look,
Um,
if it wasn't about the hunt, then you would just go out
just go
and you would
hiking.
take your camera with you and you go
Yeah.
hike and you would get as close as you could to a mature animal and you would take a picture of it. If
Yeah,
that's really all it was about,
for sure.
so we know it's not. It's about killing the animal and bringing it back and putting that animal on your family and friends dinner table.
Yeah. So
That's
we
why you're
shouldn't be
doing
ashamed
that.
of it. So,
No, because if you're ashamed, like, why are you ashamed? This goes back to our conversation about the gospel. Um, I think it could be Romans 1:16. I might be off, but I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, right? Like if you truly believe in it, then
mhm,
don't be ashamed of it. And
for
if you
sure.
truly believe that hunting is the path and that it's righteous and virtuous and it makes you a better person or there's nothing wrong with it, then you shouldn't be ashamed of it. Now,
Yeah.
yes, you can paint it in the best light possible for the optics of it, but yeah, you should proudly talk about who you are and what you do and why it's good.
Yeah. I feel like also like we were talking about with my nephew earlier, like channeling him into hunting. Um, you know, why or do you feel that hunting is a good tool in producing a healthily masculine male, and like why so?
Well, I mean, the answer, of course, is yes. There's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, you're actually going out and spending time with your male elders.
Mm.
That's one of the biggest reasons. Because like a young boy might be on video games, he might be on TikTok or social media, he might be inundated with his mom, with other moms doing play dates and this kind of thing, which like I'm not inherently against any of that.
Yeah.
But so if you look at tribes throughout history, this is a common practice where there was a ritual, there was a rite of passage for the young boys to become men.
Mm.
And the male elders of the tribe, including the father, would quite literally take the young man from his mother and the women of the village, and they would go out into the wilderness, and they were presented with a challenging task, something that required bravery and courage and sacrifice. And upon completion of that task or series of tasks, they were typically marked in some way. So they were circumcised, or they were tattooed, or they were branded, something to visually represent the fact that they were no longer a boy and they had a seat at the table with men.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what hunting does. Now, I'm not saying we need to go out and brand our kids as they shoot their first deer, but there is a signifying factor there that shows not only the rest of the village, the family, but also shows that boy that you are now among us. You have a seat at the table with the men.
For sure.
And I think that's crucial. And not to mention, like I said earlier, the bravery, the courage, the sacrifice, the commitment, the dedication, the physical confrontation, the hardship, taking another animal's life, which is a bittersweet moment. The first time I shot a deer, I looked down at that thing and I thought, this is a majestic, beautiful creature, and I killed it. And I still feel like that when I see a dead animal that I've shot with my bow or my rifle and think, I did that. And we need to come to terms with that. You're going to sit down and you're going to wolf down a burger at dinner. You better damn well know where it comes from. And you better damn well understand the sacrifices of that animal and that you had to make yourself, your feelings, the way that you interact with nature. That's natural and it's good. And we need a closer relationship. Boys and girls need to understand that relationship.
Yeah. For sure, man. So where can people find you if they want to hear more of your stuff? This has been a great conversation. I wish we could talk more, maybe some other time, but where can people find more of your stuff, man?
Yeah, if you go to, well, you're listening to a podcast, so Order of Man, wherever you're listening, is our podcast. Orderofman.com is our headquarters. And then you can connect with me on the socials, all at Ryan Mickler on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the places. You can find what we're doing.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you making some time for me, and I've enjoyed our conversation.
You bet, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.